Hello and welcome to the Publicly Challenged Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Oswald, and I hope you join me on my quest for knowledge to become a better public land hunter, angler, and forager. Stick with this and who knows, maybe we will learn something together. All right, so I am sitting here and I am talking to Jason Ellis. And Jason, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself for everyone listening?
Sure. My name is Jason Ellis. I'm one of the owners of Lost Pines Yopon Tea. We're based in Central Texas. We make tea from the native Texas Yopon holly, which is abundant here. Some would say invasive, even though it's native. So it's technically not invasive, but yeah, we make tea out of Yopon. It's all foraged. It's all regenerative agriculture. That's what I do with most of my day.
So, okay. Yopon comes from holly. It contains caffeine.
Yeah.
What else about it? Like, what's the history of it? At some point in history, did it have a long lineage? Was there an indigenous usage to it? I have so many questions, but maybe we can just kind of touch base on that and start with that.
Sure. Yeah. So Yopon is an ancient drink. Native Americans drank it way before Europeans showed up here. It grows all along the Gulf Coast, from Texas all the way through Florida. It hugs the coast. I'm guessing all along the way where it doesn't get below 0 Fahrenheit. I'm not sure exactly the temperature that kills Yopon, but along the Gulf Coast and then up the Atlantic coast to Virginia. And it was traded all the way up to Cahokia. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yep.
In St. Louis. And then all the way, they found the chemical markers of Yopon as far west as Arizona in pottery. Which is actually interesting. It also had traces of cacao in it. Also, it wasn't just Yopon, but Yopon and cacao, which comes from a really long way away.
That is super interesting, though. Like the dynamic of that. So now you're like mixing caffeine along with this like euphoric buzz from the coca leaves as well. I mean, that's just
cacao.
Cacao. Okay, because I was like coca leaves. That's like. Now you get the caffeine buzz and the buzz from the other. Man, that had to have been quite the euphoric feeling. But either way, cacao too. I'm sure
cacao's got theobromine in it,
which is like a little bit of caffeine as well, or a pick-me-up, right?
Theobromine is molecularly very, very similar to caffeine. It's just missing a little part of the molecule. It looks almost identical to caffeine. It's not as powerful, but it's a little longer lasting. It's considered the pleasure molecule in chocolate. It's what makes people happy, apparently, in chocolate.
Nice.
Not really dark stuff.
Chocolate does make me happy.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah,
it was traded. It was very, very important to Native Americans all over the country, not just in the areas where it natively grew.
That's amazing. It kind of puts into perspective how vast and advanced these societies that we once thought or were taught throughout history maybe weren't as advanced or had different methods. But it turns out, I mean, they had a well-established trade. They had, hunting patterns and routes and just, makes you wonder about so many other things. And the fact that they find all these in Cahokia, as you mentioned, the ragweed, and they cultivated it and mass harvested it for something, but we have no idea whether it was for the fibers or something to do with the seeds. And they believe it's something to do with the seeds, but we don't actually know what it was used for. It blows my mind that maybe all these civilizations were way more advanced than we ever thought. Even like early European civilizations, and somewhere along the way we lost something, or technology and stuff was lost. It's very fascinating.
Yeah, Cahokia was the largest city north of Mexico City.
Yeah.
And something that we don't really learn about.
No, not really. You tend to learn about the way latter stuff, European presence. But I always find that stuff fascinating. So The Yaupon or Yopon, it's pronounced Yopon, right?
It comes from a Catawban word. It means little tree. Yope apparently means tree, and you put on in the end of it, it makes it diminutive. So it's Yopon. It means little tree.
Okay.
So none of us are probably pronouncing it correctly. I say Yopon. Most
Yeah.
people say Yopon. I hear people say Yapon a lot.
Okay.
I mean, people ask me how to pronounce it. I say Yopon, but I'm sure there's a
And
different way of saying it
and
too.
so I wouldn't that's something in the Midwest that I just wouldn't be able to grow, right?
You could container grow it, I'm sure, as I think it can take, I mean, I know it can take temperatures down to zero. We got, when we, got hit by the ice apocalypse here in Texas,
Yeah.
but the Yopon was covered in ice. It was fine. It didn't care.
Okay.
Doesn't care about ice, doesn't care about drought. I've seen it growing on sand barrier islands along the Gulf of Mexico where it's just its roots are in salty water and it's getting sprayed with salt water all day long. So I've seen it growing in fields that are flooded for months on end. It doesn't really, as long as it's, I'm not sure what will kill it, but I think it's low temperatures about it.
Okay. So what are like the unique identifiers if somebody's going to look for it? I mean, what makes it stand out as far as the plant itself?
It's an evergreen, so it has leaves year round. Uh, it has berries because it's a holly plant. They start off green. Right now, they're green this time of year. Then they'll turn orangish later in the fall, and then during winter, they're bright red. The leaves are oval with serrated edges, not pointy. Not like people think of hollies as being like really pointy, like that American holly that people use for hedges all the time has really nasty thorns on it. But Yopon is, yeah, basically the oval shaped leaves, serrated leaves, berries. It's not really doesn't really stand out
Okay.
a whole lot, except for when it's when it's covered in red berries. It's beautiful,
Nice.
but the rest of the time it just kind of grows like a shrub. When people grow it in the South, it's one of the top landscaping plants here in Central Texas because it's so hardy. People prune it into all kinds of crazy shapes, anything from hedgerows to these little lollipop looking trees. But out in the wild, it just grows like a thicket, really, where you'll have one plant, a root ball underground, and you'll have, 10, 15, 20 branches, suckers, whatever, coming out of the ground everywhere.
So
And it's just the same plant.
it almost sounds like it's like a honeysuckle, but actually has a wonderful purpose versus versus honeysuckle, which
Honeysuckle tastes good.
I hate it.
I remember as a little kid, I loved the honeysuckle.
Yeah, but I absolutely hate it. It maybe if I knew a greater purpose for it, but other than just the taste and maybe some slight medicinal stuff, to me, it it's such a destructor of other habitat. It ruins a
Is it?
lot.
I don't know much about
It
honeysuckle.
shades out so much other stuff that it actually kills off native plants and because it shades them out. So to
Oh, right
me,
on.
that just it's a terrible plant. I do a lot of hunting and I hate having to try and traverse through it. If you down an animal and it goes in there, um, very difficult to retrieve it. It just
That's
grows
how
and
people talk about Yopon around here.
okay. Well, at least that one has caffeine, and I would not be mad about that because I love caffeine. So,
Where I live out here in Bastrop, Yopon's everywhere. It's the predominant understory to the entire pine forest and all the other area around here. It's just absolutely everywhere. It grows in huge thickets. People call it invasive all the time, just because of the way it grows. It's native, so it's not invasive,
right.
but it loves disturbed land. So you cut down 100 acres for cattle ranching, and then you stop cattle ranching. The first woody plant to come back is Yopon or cedar, and it just takes over the entire area, which is really the first step of forest succession, which is it's kind of healing the land in that
Right.
way. But it's also a 1,000 year, 2,000 year long process with humans around here. It doesn't really work out that well because they're going to come in here and clear the land out or this. And also this whole area is pine forest, it pretty much evolved with burns happening, yearly or every other year. It gets burned so often that the underbrush is kept really, really short, and it just burns up the underbrush and doesn't really become a tinderbox. So what happens with human settlement out here is we don't like our stuff burning down. So we put out all the fires that spring up, but then we never go out and cut down the underbrush that would have burnt up in the fire.
Right.
So you end up with a large amount of this wildfire fuel, which is in 2011, we had a huge fire here in Central Texas called the Bastrop Complex Fire. It was the sixth most damaging wildfire in U.S. history and the most damaging wildfire in Texas history. It burned 45,000 acres, 1,600 homes. I was living in Austin at the time, which is about 30 miles from Bastrop, and the sky was apocalyptic gray for days because of the fire. And yeah, it was pretty insane. It was pretty much all Yopon fueled. Power lines apparently came down, set off some untrimmed Yopon or underbrush. And then, like I said, this forest, if you have a small fire, all those pine trees, there's barely any branches along the bottom. So when a forest fire, is on the forest floor, it's not a big deal. But once firefighters call it ladder fuel, when you have like a 25-foot Yopon that it starts from the forest floor and it goes up into the canopy of the pine trees. And once it's in the canopy, it just, it's over.
Yeah.
It just goes from all over the place.
Wow. That's
a lot of people's relationship with Yopon here in Central Texas. People see it as a danger and a nuisance.
I think,
and that's how we get access to a lot of the land to harvest it.
So
actually,
that's what I find fascinating, though, is it's not actually the plants that are the danger and the nuisance. It's our lack of a relationship with these plants or wild tending that we used to do. And then also just lack of knowledge in the spread of man all over the place and destruction of habitat that creates these problems that otherwise, wouldn't really exist. And then, of course, nobody wants anything to burn. Like you said, they don't want to burn things. And if we did it controllably and did controlled burns, which it made me so happy this spring. For the first time, I saw a lot of parcels that the Department of Natural Resources owns for the first time ever in the history of my lifetime being burned. And I thought to myself, what a great thing they're doing. And so many native new plants popped up on that hadn't been there or I haven't seen in years because of that. And it's just wonderful. And if we could see more people doing that, it'd really, really help everything.
There's a property that we've been harvesting on the longest. This lady owns about 70 acres. And then she has about 10 acres that we've been harvesting on because she does absolutely nothing with it. It's just wild. And there's an endangered toad out here called the Houston toad. And its last major breeding population is in Bastrop. There's about 5,000 toads in the area. And cutting the Yopon back really helps their habitat because the toads really need the biodiversity of like a more established forest. And whenever Yopon forms thickets, it just grows kind of as a monoculture. And then, so it flowers in the spring, brings in a bunch of insects then, but then for the rest of the year, there's just nothing going on there. So the toad really, and pretty much all the other species around here need a more established ecosystem, with more biodiversity. So cutting the Yopon back helps the toad out, and the property owners can get a wildlife property tax break for creating toad habitat. And that's another way that we get access to people's property.
That's wonderful.
They want the wild, it's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
So that property burned in 2011, and we've gone out there and kept on 10 acres of it, kept that Yopon really, really low. And we've seen a whole bunch of pine trees basically grow up since then. There's loblolly pines. They're at 11 years old. They're probably like 15 feet tall now. So they're above where the Yopon thickets kind of form. So they won't be crowded out anymore. So that area will turn back into a pine forest pretty quick. But I haven't seen any new pine trees coming up since then. Like all those pine trees all came up within a few years of that forest fire.
That's interesting. So
Which
do
is,
you?
you're saying you saw all those native plants come up in that
Yeah,
area that you haven't seen burned.
yeah,
I Yeah, these pine trees, I haven't seen any new baby pine trees come up since that fire, since within a few years of that fire.
nice.
So it
So
really, really, I think it really does need the fire.
yeah, yeah. That's so I mean eventually do you think that Yopon will disappear because it will be shaded out by the canopy of the pines, or will it exist with that pine forest?
It'll exist in the pine forest, just
Okay.
not nearly as abundant.
Yeah.
It takes shade really well. You give it sunlight and it goes crazy, but it survives in the shade really, really well. The leaves actually get really fat and big. A lot of the yopon that we harvest in areas with a lot of sunlight, the leaves are really small. But some of the yopon growing in the shade, the leaves will be 5, 6 times the size of the yopon growing out in the sunlight
So does
because
that
it just,
mean
I guess, it needs bigger solar panels.
so right for to metabolize? That's pretty cool. So do you think like those leaves, is it just because of volume, or do they contain more caffeine, or how does that play into it?
From what I've read, the only thing that seems to affect the caffeine level is nitrogen. More
Okay.
nitrogen is more caffeine. I believe you get more antioxidants if it's grown in the sun, if it's more sun.
Okay. So let's kind of get into the whole harvesting method and how that works. I mean, are you cutting it, hand picking? What are the methods and methods of take?
We so we When we go out and harvest by ourselves, we basically, I mean, we do. So we sometimes we go out and harvest with a group called the Alum Creek Wildlife Management Association. Texas is kind of divided up into separate areas of these private property. The wildlife management associations are made up of private property owners in certain areas. And the area that we work with the most is the Alum Creek Wildlife Management Association. Most of them manage their properties for Houston toad habitat so that they can get the wildlife tax break for that. And when we work with them, they have these monthly work groups where they get together with neighbors and everybody comes to one place and they cut the yopon down to the ground and they actually spray the stumps with a mixture of diesel and Roundup or Remedy, diesel and Remedy, I believe. It's
Uh,
herbicide. It's really the only way you're going to kill yopon unless you dig it up by the root. We don't do that when we harvest for ourselves, but that is the way, the park rangers and the biologists and, the people that really study it, that's the way they say to do it. If you want to, get rid of it, they don't, just broadcast spray it. They have
yeah.
little hand sprayers and after they cut the stump, they just spray just the the stump. It's not something I really like,
No,
but
me neither. In fact,
um,
today my mother-in-law just commented on the fact that she said something to my wife about, well, Luke's not exactly one to spray, is he? They were talking about a little bit of poison ivy that was in the yard, and
mhm,
not if I don't have to. I,
yep.
I I see benefits at some point, but you also have to weigh the cost, of that, and better somebody else spraying than me or you or um, getting exposed to those chemicals, because we all know what they're capable of. Years and years and millions of dollars, probably billions of dollars of lawsuits paid out, just go to show the effect that they have on humans. And I wish they would quit putting it on our food um, as well. But, until people really actually wake up and realize the harm. And I've got a lot of honeysuckle on my property, and I'm trying to reduce it. And one of my friends actually told me that copper nails actually work rather effectively. He said, yes, it takes 3 times longer to do that, but if you come back the next year uh, after you put a bunch of copper nails in it, that it'll actually die off at the root, and you have to pull it out. He said at some point it almost looks like it's going to come back, and then if you give it time, it will die off. But obviously, nobody wants to wait that long. But I
I've heard
wish
that
they would
about copper
understand
also.
that. Yeah, I wish they would understand that and realize the negative effects they're doing as well. But at least they're not broadcast spreading it, and they are localizing it. But yeah. Um,
Yeah.
anyway, enough of my
Yeah,
soapbox
you
on.
know what I've done before? I had to cut down 2 magnolia trees in my front yard that were planted underneath the power line, and the previous homeowner, it was just a mess. Cut the magnolia trees down and then drilled the stumps and then filled them full of oyster mushroom mycelium.
I love that.
And those stumps were gone real quick. I
Yeah,
didn't get any oyster mushrooms out of my. I did see the oyster mushroom starting to pin and grow, but the mycelium tore up the stump pretty
that
good.
that's awesome. That's awesome. I've actually got a downed cottonwood that if the mycelium doesn't eat it all before I get to it, I really one day want to actually make like a dugout canoe out of it. I think that'd be so cool.
Oh, that'd be sweet.
But who knows? At least I'm getting oyster mushrooms off of it, so I can't really complain too much. But I have done the same thing with lion's mane on uh, hackberry before, and
Okay.
it does grow. Um, I ended up grinding the stump because I didn't want to hit it with a tire where it was at. I felt like that was a real thing, but I did get one season, and I saw it start to colonize, but I never got anything out of it. But yeah, that's pretty cool though. So when you're harvesting with them, you're taking out like mass quantities, entire bushes. Is the only the leaf is what's utilized though, right?
Yes. Well, leaves and the tiniest little twigs, but
Okay.
we try to get as many twigs out and make it as just all leafy. But the tiny twigs are good too. If we had a really good grinder that could grind everything up better, I would probably use more of the smaller twigs too.
Okay. And then when you
But
go other properties, you guys actually hand harvest. Uh,
we mostly cut to the ground then too, because we're trying to reduce the amount of yaupon out there to let other native plants,
okay.
you know, kind of compete against it. But we cut it to the ground. We don't spray it because I'm happy to come back out there and harvest it again.
Right. Right.
But basically, on the other properties, we just basically maintain it for them until the overstory gets tall enough, which we have one property now where that's actually starting to happen, which is pretty cool.
All right. No, that okay. So then you guys do that, and then there's like, I mean, how many pounds are we talking that you guys utilize in a
So
year?
I went out and harvested with 2 other people on Friday, and we get out there as early as we can. We're having a heat wave here in Texas. It was 103 that day, so we got out of here at the crack of dawn, got out to the field, and harvested till about 2:30. I mean, I'm sorry, 12:30. So basically 7 to 12:30, and then headed home or back to the warehouse. And that was about, after we process it all, it'll probably be about 60 pounds.
Okay. And
3 people in 5 hours.
so what do you
It's a
need
lot of work.
to make a batch? I mean, what are you talking as far as volume to make like are you making large batches? Is it small scale? What are you guys doing with that?
So we're selling at farmers markets. We're in all the Austin Whole Foods here, and the Wheatsville locations in Austin. We sell online. How much do we produce? I don't know. I'm guessing about 120 pounds a month, I would say. It's not crazy, but it's quite a bit of work
S-
to do that.
Pounds or gallons are you talking of tea?
Pounds,
Okay, pounds.
pounds,
So
pounds.
so you weigh out the tea then, or is that
We sell it in loose leaf and we sell it in tea
okay?
bags.
Okay.
We also do these tea concentrates that we make from the Yopon, but actually, like, just straight up leaf weight about 120 pounds a month.
Okay.
And then we turn it into tea bags or package it. We do all that in house here too. Instead of sending it off, we have our own tea bag machine here. It's the cheapest kind of tea bag machine you can get.
Okay.
Those things get really expensive. They're like Ferraris.
Right. Right. I can imagine. I do a little bit of coffee roasting and stuff, so I mean, I know how quickly things can get out of hand, and I still just use my Be More, and that's good enough because I don't. And then that's electrically anyway, and then I built my own. It's out of a grill that occasionally I use, but
Oh, right
honestly,
on.
I use the electric one just because it's way more convenient. I don't roast in the summertime though, because just things get too hot with electric, so I tend to roast a little more.
Everything we've done is pretty much DIY here
Okay.
because there's no Yopon industry, so we had to figure out how to do everything.
Now,
So yeah, we
I'm sorry.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
I was gonna say we cut the branches out, out in the wild, fill up truck, trailer, bring it back to the warehouse, and we have these 10 foot by 10 foot drying tables, and then we just pile it on top of these drying tables. Then there's a tarp underneath the drying table to catch any leaves that fall down. And then depending on temperature and humidity, however long that takes, the leaves get pretty dry. And then you can just whack on that whole pile of sticks and the leaves fall down into tarp, which makes it a lot easier than hand picking. And then they're also dried at that point. And then we've got some sifters that we built that we use this. It's actually an aggregate shaking machine that we repurposed just to shake these screens full of Yopon to basically separate any dust or dirt, and then also sifting out sticks and stuff like that. And then we have to go through it by hand again. And then we roast it in convection oven, then we grind it, and then we either put it in tea bags in-house or package it in-house. We also make all our concentrates in-house.
So when does it have to be roasted, or is it something that can be drank green? Does it take like that roasting process in order to activate the chemicals in it that give it the caffeine, or no?
No, it's not about activation. Yopon has a really waxy cuticle, and the outside of the
Okay.
leaf cuticle is really, really waxy. It's so dry here. It really just likes to hold on to its water. It's really hydrophobic. If you don't roast it at all, it doesn't steep that well. Once you roast it a little bit, it breaks down that outer cuticle. The Native Americans, everything I've read about it says that they roasted it till it was really dark to break down that outer waxy cuticle, and then they would make tea out of it then. I assume they also did lighter roast and darker roast. Everybody has this kind of idea that all Native Americans were the same homogenous culture,
Right.
instead of being like all the different countries of Europe, with different cuisines and, ways of doing things based on where you lived. But yeah, so we do a light roast and a dark roast out of it, just to break down the outer cuticle. There are other companies that are doing just a straight green dried one. It's fine.
What flavor? I always hate having to compare something to something else, right? It's like, well, what does milkweed taste like, right? Well, milkweed tastes like milkweed, but if you had to compare it, you could say, oh, it's a mix between green beans, asparagus, and maybe they had a baby with broccoli. You know what I mean? But
I always tell people that the lightly roast, so it's a relative to yerba mate and
okay.
guayusa. I'm not sure if you know about yerba mate. It's a holly from South America,
Yeah.
wildly popular
I've had a
down
little
there.
bit of yerba mate. Most of the time they add like mint to it or something else, but
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
so I don't really know the actual profile of it, but I can kind of get an idea of that like milder tea taste. Um,
So it's Yopon's really low in tannins, has a lot less tannins than tea does. So it doesn't have as much of that bite at the end. It can get bitter just because of caffeine and theobromine are bitter alkaloids. But the light roast tastes a lot like a green tea, like a really smooth green tea that's really low in tannins. And the dark roast tastes a lot closer to a black tea, kind of with oaky whiskey barrel flavor to it,
oh, I
like a
love that.
roasty, like a oaky kind of smoky whiskey barrel flavor.
I like that. I like that.
It's pretty good. I sell a lot more. So I do farmers markets every Sunday here in Austin, and sell a lot of Yopon there. What I sell most of at the farmers market is the light roast. It's just really smooth, easy to drink. And what I sell to most of the restaurants around here, the fancy restaurants that like to source locally and stuff, is all dark roast. They only buy dark roast, which
Okay.
I just think it's a hilarious. Like the fancy restaurants buy this, the farmers market people all they buy is the light roast. It's just
Interesting
different structure.
dynamic there.
I
Yeah.
think they use it in recipes and stuff. That dark roast has more oomph to it that can cut through other flavors, and you can mix it in other things.
Yeah. No, that's cool. So what's the caffeine content like versus coffee? I mean, and I know that's varying, but like I think the industry standard is around like 40 to 65 milligrams of caffeine per 8 ounce cup of coffee. depending on
So
roast and
it
whatever. But
all depends on how you make it, really.
okay,
Um, so by weight, coffee is about 1.1% caffeine by weight. Yopon is about 0.85% caffeine by weight. And what surprises a lot of people is that actual tea is 3 times as strong as coffee by weight. Tea is 3.5% caffeine,
yeah,
but it has so many tannins in it, and just that you. So whenever you're making a cup of coffee, you have a tablespoon of coffee that's finely ground, a whole lot of weight. If you make a cup of tea, it's usually just some like rolled up flowers or rolled up leaves with not very much surface area. It's like a teaspoon of it, and it's use lower temperature water, which doesn't extract as much caffeine. If you brewed tea like coffee, where you ground it up as fine as coffee and use the same weight of it, and you brewed it at the same temperature for the same time, it would be about 3 times as strong as coffee and probably too bitter to drink because of the tannins.
hmm.
Your Yopon is so low in tannins, you can just add more leaf matter into it. So you can brew Yopon at a teaspoon per cup, and it's about the strength of a green tea, because we actually grind the leaves down a little bit more, so it has more surface area than tea, and we brew it at like near boiling. Or this is the way I do it. I mean, you can
Right.
do it however you want. Which is the fun thing about Yopon is the whole culture about it's been lost, so no one can tell you you're doing it wrong. So
That's
you can just do whatever you want.
okay.
So
So
at a teaspoon per cup, it's about a green tea. Or you can, load up, 6 tablespoons in a French press and brew it like coffee, and it's caffeinated like coffee. So it's pretty variable. And then you also get the theobromine kick too, which is nice because it's longer lasting than caffeine, but not as strong. So once that caffeine starts wearing off, and this is anecdotal, I think the
the
theobromine is
crash.
still kicking around out
Yeah.
there. So instead of just dropping you on your butt, it kind of lets you down a little more gentle at
Let
the
me
end, so
down
you
easy.
don't get as
Yeah.
much of that crash. But that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. Because I'm not gonna lie, a lot of people talk about it, but that caffeine addiction, that high that people don't realize it actually gives you, I realize it and I know it, but I still love it, and I want to, and the way I make my coffee, my dad doesn't want it, or other people don't like it. Some people tell me they actually feel their temples have a pulse, depending on what my roast is and how
Yeah.
how I actually make it. I'm going to be honest. One of my favorite ways lately, especially when I'm out in the field or traveling or something, is I take an AeroPress with me, which is one of the coolest devices
Hmm.
ever for making a cup of coffee. And I have to say, it's probably one of the smoothest tasting cups, no matter what the coffee is, from that device. So if Yopon is really that smooth, chances are I'm going to load it up. I'm going to I'm going to take it to a whole new level.
You can make it pretty strong.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So when you make your concentrates, I mean, are those fairly strong, or is it just like a nice tea? I saw
It's
another day, you guys did a social media thing, and it was a poll to see like what should we make next, and I think it was like 97% of the people said peach or something like that, which I totally
we
voted for that too. It just seems like a great combination.
we do we yeah yeah. Yeah. The concentrates they're about green tea strength. They're You use them basically like a cold brew coffee kind of thing.
Hmm.
But they're more like green tea strength. I've been working on a Yopon soda. It tastes like a smoky Coca-Cola. That'll
Oh,
be a lot stronger. And the only ingredients are dark roast Yopon, some vitamin C, ascorbic acid, to bring the pH down and to give that tang, and then cane sugar and then carbonate it. And it's kind of crazy. Those 3 ingredients, it tastes like a Coca-Cola, but with this smoky flavor to it. It's really good.
it sounds amazing, and it makes me want one. I'm not gonna lie. Like, so is that
Like
something?
mescali.
Do you guys sell that? So that stuff, like the limited stuff that you're making, is that pretty much like farmers markets, or is that online too?
The concentrates are online. We roll flavors out at the farmers markets to test them out.
Okay.
It's really great. I love doing the farmers market. It's actually profitable and marketing at the same time, which is a great combo. And we get to talk to customers and tell people all about it, and people are excited to hear about it. And then you also get to, give people samples. We give out so many samples every weekend just to try out, see what people like.
I think I'm going to get so when are these farmers markets? Every Saturday throughout the summer or what?
Every Sunday, 10 to 2.
Sunday 10
Every
to 2?
Sunday, 10
Looks like I'm going to get some cheapo airfare here. Get a Southwest flight.
to 2.
Go try some samples when I see you guys roll something out that I really want to try.
Oh, Austin's a fun place.
Yeah. No, I used to come to Austin, but yeah. So how did Lost Pines start? Like, where name come from? How did you guys meet and say, "Hey, let's start this company where we actually let's make some Yopon tea," you know?
So my buddy John and my friend Heidi and I, we're all just really into foraging. We did a lot of foraging for dewberries out here and also Mustang grapes out here. And I'd always been I'd been thinking about Yopon for quite a while. When I first learned about it, I was actually kind of shocked that we had a caffeinated plant here in Central Texas, and nobody was really doing anything with it at the time. And I mean, caffeine's the most popular drug in the world. There's a trillion servings of caffeine per year, and there was no native North American caffeinated plant. You can't grow coffee in North America, really. Well, not in the United States.
Right.
You can't. I mean, there's some tea plantations in the United States. They don't. I don't know how profitable they are. It's not a huge industry here, or they don't seem to grow very well here. But Yopon is just absolutely everywhere. So at first, I thought it must taste awful because nobody was doing anything with it. So then I went and harvested some and roasted some the way I heard people used to do it, and I thought it was delicious. And I would talk to friends all the time about, like, hey, there's this thing, it'd be a great business idea. And really, I was just looking for somebody to do it with me, I guess. And then John and Heidi, I made them some Yopon tea. I was talking to them about it, and they're like, "Yeah, let's do this," And then there was all this other extra goodness that happened, just that, the abundance of Yopon here. It's an evergreen, so we can harvest year round. It's a nuisance to so many people, so clearing it out, people are happy to get rid of it, and we're also helping people do it. Getting rid of it helps with forest fire prevention. And then, we found out about the Houston toad and how, like, it's, actually harvesting from their habitat helps too. So just like all these things just kind of came together, and it was like, this is great. And that's, it was all kind of luck, honestly.
Yeah. No, that sounds, I mean, it's wonderful. The fact that the company is actually doing something beneficial and at the same time creating a great product. I mean, that's the best of both worlds. It's something, if anybody wants to get behind something, that's something to get behind. I mean, it serves a great purpose, right? Restoring habitat, getting caffeine out of it, good tasting drinks. I mean, what more does a person want than to be able to forage or know, and the intimacy you guys have with that product as well. I mean, the fact that you're out there, you're the ones processing it. It's not like you're sourcing it from someone else or coming in on cargo ships, or it's a local native thing that everyone's benefiting from. That's pretty cool to see, for sure. I like that. I followed you guys for a while on social media and actually just kind of had no idea, just watched it, and I was like, oh, that's really cool, But being able to talk to you and hear that story, it's pretty fascinating. But let's kind of talk about some of the other foraging stuff. I mean, how long ago did that start? Where did that come from to kind of get like a feel for, your passion for all of that?
I don't know. I was in scouts as a kid. My my mom and dad got divorced when I was little, and he was a soldier and lived in Germany, and I was living in the United States with my mom. It's actually kind of funny. She's German, he's American. But he bought me yeah, subscription to National Geographic. So I got, a National Geographic book every month, and it's all about animals and stuff. I think that's really got my, love of the natural world, and being in scouts, love to do a lot of canoeing and camping and stuff like that. Foraging, I came kind of later on in life though, after I really got into gardening, and then learning about gardening in Central Texas. So they've got, the USDA gardening zones. I'm sure a lot of y'all are familiar with, they've got like, I don't know where it starts, but it's like 2 through 12 or whatever. In Central Texas, we're in 8B. And then there's the Sunset something gardening zone, which is way more detailed, where it takes a whole lot more variables into consideration. I think the USDA gardening zone only takes winter low temperatures into consideration. I think that's the biggest thing. The Sunset gardening zone calendar takes way more things into consideration. And so Central Texas is like a 36A, and we're the only 36A in the entire country.
Yeah.
Gardening here in Central Texas, it's weird.
The hill country of Texas is very special and unique versus the rest of the state. It's very interesting to see just how everything is, or the fact that when people think of Texas, they think of like Houston or something like that, and it's just super humid, and you're getting that like coastal humidity, and even though there's breezes, you can't feel it. But you're high enough up in the hill country to where those breezes actually carry away that humidity, and it's not bad. It's interesting, and some of the lakes and different things that they have there, and just the marble deposits, and it's fascinating to me. I like that country.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's really pretty. Yeah.
Yeah. So
trying to garden in Central Texas, and then basically being a lazy gardener, and then thinking, well, what grows natively around here that produces something that I can put in the ground and not have to spend all this time on it, because there's things everywhere. So I got a Native American ethnobotany book, and just to see what people grew around here. And that's really how I found about Yaupon, is looking through this book. And
that's
caffeine.
Cool. Yeah. Who doesn't love caffeine? I love caffeine. I love it.
I was like, what? A caffeinated plant? This is ridiculous.
Sometimes I even go through a caffeine cleanse. I will actually take myself into a detox mode to where I will go a week or two without caffeine, just so I can feel that euphoria again when I have it. That wonderful feeling of that first cup in the morning, and you're like, yes, love this. Maybe I've got an addictive personality. I don't know. We're not going to go into that, but
it's the most popular drug in the world.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So no, that's awesome. But so what does foraging look like for you? I mean, is it still as prevalent now that you're super busy doing the Yaupon stuff, or?
Honestly, I don't get to do nearly as much of it. I still like to pick dewberries when I'm out in the field and eat them right there on the spot.
Yeah.
Been playing around with loblolly pine needles to make tea with. It's pretty good. I just bought a property here in Bastrop, and it's 3.5 acres, so I get to play around with the stuff out here without having to, tromps around too far away.
Right.
But yeah, it's a lot more Yaupon based, trying to keep the company going.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
I can imagine.
We haven't had any investors or anything. I mean, we haven't tried to get any investors. We've had people offer, but we've always tried to keep everything to ourselves, so we have total control of everything, do it with our vision instead of.
I like that. I like the fact that, honestly, there may be a struggle at some point. There may be hurdles that you have to overcome, but in the end, one that makes you a better business person and a lot stronger coming out to face other problems in the future, and the fact that you still maintain control of everything. Maybe at some point, it gets to a point to where you can actually back away and look at it from a different lens, but being able to foster something, build it and build it up, I love that. I love doing it myself. This podcast, everything, it's been on my own. It's a huge learning curve, and there's struggles. And yes, I could have done things differently, but without those struggles, I never would have learned all of the things I've learned along the way that make me that much smarter in the end. So I'm with you on that one. I totally get that. I totally get that. But
It makes
is
it go a little slower, but it's great.
yeah, and that's fine.
You appreciate it along the way.
Yeah, without that struggle, definitely, you'll appreciate it more with that struggle than without it. Um,
Also, if we would have gotten investor money in the beginning, I so much money would have just been wasted. I got to make a whole bunch of mistakes, smaller mistakes along the way instead of making big mistakes.
right. Yeah. So is there anything in particular that you always look forward to foraging that you still get out and do in Texas? I'm always kind of curious because um, any and all the times I've been in Texas, I've never really had a chance to go foraging or do any of that, and I did not know as many plants as I know now. So it always makes me curious to what actually is there versus my little climate that I'm used to, my home foraging base, if you will.
Right. So I've done a lot of kind of urban foraging. I lived in Austin for a long time and did a lot of bike riding around everywhere. When you're riding your bike, you really get to look at everything a lot more. And lots of wild grapes. Texas is actually home to, I think it's like 50, something ridiculous. I mean, fact check me on this. 50% of the grape species of the world, or something like that, are
Whoa.
from Texas. Just none of the really good table wine grapes,
Right.
But I find oyster mushrooms here, reishi mushrooms all the time. I found chanterelles; they're pretty rare. Apparently, you can find morels here, even, which I've
Yeah.
never seen one here, but
I
apparently you can find them here.
wonder if that's a correlation to the burns that used to happen versus now. Um, it,
Oh, and the morels,
yeah.
maybe, I don't know. I know here you find them on sloped land under cedar near water, like up from a creek along a slope under some cedar. You'll find
Okay.
morels.
Yeah.
That's the hints I've gotten here.
Yeah. Because
Um, native blackberries. We have a plant called dewberry here. We call them dewberries. They're just trailing blackberries. They're delicious.
yeah.
Um, a lot of loquats in town from people just planting loquat trees everywhere. People call them Japanese plums too.
Right.
Mexican plum grows here. They taste like they're about the size of a cherry. They look like cherries, but they're tiny little plums. They're delicious.
Interesting. Yeah. I've always wondered, I find it fascinating that a lot of the things we have here, people don't have in other climates, and then um, just vice versa. You guys probably have all kinds of native plants that I've never encountered, or at least yet.
Pecans everywhere.
Yeah. Oh man, that's so cool. I mean, we've got pecans in Illinois, but nothing like Texas. And I mean, are a lot of them native, or is it?
The both. Well, so I've lived in two neighborhoods. So I've probably spent half of my life living under pecan trees. So I've lived in two areas for a really long time that used to be pecan plantations that became neighborhoods. So you've got a mixture of like paper shell pecan trees that are like old leftover pecan trees, and then also the trees that grow up from their pecans turning back into native pecan trees, kind of like the way apple trees
Yeah.
go wild when they come back from seed.
Yeah. No, that's
But
cool.
the native ones are delicious. I used to live next to a place called LeBlanc's, and they would trade you out the native ones for the paper shell ones because they like to use the native ones for making pecan pie because they're more oily.
Oh, that's my favorite. That's my favorite. There's
Pecan pie.
yeah, there's a little diner called the Blue Bonnet Cafe that I used to love going to and getting pecan pie, and that's awesome. And they were always, bragged about Texas pecans. You got to have the Texas
Yep.
pecans and the pecan pie. And I
Yep.
wonder to this day because it doesn't taste anything like a lot of the other pies that I've tasted. That if maybe it was the native ones that they were utilizing for that pie. I don't know, but
They might.
yeah. So that's awesome. It's been great, like talking to you about all of these things. If somebody wants to find you and find you on social media, follow the company, maybe purchase some things, where can they find all of that and do all of that?
So our social media handle on everything is Lost Pines Yopon. So Instagram, Facebook, TikTok.
Nice.
Also, lostpinesyopont.com for our website. And we're on Amazon too. But go
You're
to
on
our
Amazon?
websites too. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Awesome. And then also, if you live in Texas, you can go to Whole Foods.
Go to the farmer's market or Whole Foods.
Okay. Now, you're saying it's all of Texas that you're in, or is it just...
No. The Whole Foods, I'm sorry. The Whole Foods just Austin for now.
Okay. Which is still awesome, right?
7 Austin Whole Foods.
That's
it's great.
Amazing.
It's great.
Yeah. That's how it starts until somebody starts requesting it for another store, and there it goes. So that's really cool.
We have to go do demos. It's, everybody thinks like, oh, you get into someplace like Whole Foods and all of a sudden you're selling a bunch of product, but our tea is on the second to bottom shelf. Yeah. Nobody knows what it is. So we have to go in there and do demos, and you have to give out samples and be like, hey, have you tried Yopon tea before? Like, yeah. And it's fun talking to people about it too. So it's not,
Right. And I can tell you definitely have a passion for it. So it's not like it's hard to talk about it, right? It's something so cool, it's easy. Like if somebody mentions foraging to me, boy, I might talk their ear off, whatever, or hunting or whatever. So I totally get that. But so people don't realize how much it costs or big brands pay to get that prime space, retail space in a store or shelf space. And lately on TikTok, there's a dude, I don't remember what his name is, but so I've been watching his videos, and he'll actually break down brands and who owns those brands. And you could eliminate 99% on all retail shelves, everything as far as the grocery store or like Target aisles of shampoo aisles and toothpaste, everything that's owned by these mega conglomerates or megacorps by themselves. So awesome local product in there. And you like caffeine, you like tea, you're like me, check it out, man. That's so cool. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about it and educating me, because for a long time I've been curious. I didn't really know, and it's great to know now. And I'm definitely gonna have to start drinking some Yopon every once in a while. And I might just pack that press as much as I can and see what comes out of it. So
sounds good. Make it strong. Yeah. Thank you. This has been fun.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on and talking to us. It's been fun.
Cool. Have a good one. Appreciate it.
And once again, thank you so much for listening to the Publicly Challenged podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please subscribe on whatever platform it is you're listening to. Also, if you could leave a review, that would help us out. And you can check us out on Instagram or at publiclychallenged.com. And once again, thank you so much for listening to the show.